Nice. Welcome, guys, to this session, Relevant Career Mindset. So nice to have you here. So I think we start with a bit of an introduction first. So, ladies first, who are you, Serena, and what do you do, and where are you based?
Hi everyone. I'm Serena. I'm based in Hong Kong, so the weather is amazing right now. So
And the
basically, I'm
view.
Ser- Thank you. So yeah, I'm the founder and CEO of Care Bear. So we are a mental health tech startup that we're incorporated into the Science Park in Hong Kong, and we are running. We're pretty new. Like me, we're part of Generation Z. I'm a fresh graduate out of college, but I think that there's nothing stopping me, especially during COVID times. And we basically found our niche within COVID, where a lot of students are feeling very isolated, very lonely amidst the pandemic. So basically, what we're doing is we are incorporating technology with a human touch in a gamified app, as well as a customized care package service to connect peers who are mentally depressed with each other and help them alleviate the symptoms that they might have. And so that's basically what we do in a nutshell, because we believe that there's nothing better than knowing that the person opposite you is going through the same thing that you are. You understand them the most. And so basically we use this peer support model, as well as a smart goals framework, to basically bring them step by step out of that depressed state into a hopefully more motivated state that can help them in their daily lives as well. But it's really amazing. It's great to be here, and I'd love to hear what other people have to say as well.
That's so amazing, Serena. So heartwarming. And now I think we can go to Tyler. Hello, Tyler.
All right, hello Joseph, and yeah, glad to be here today. So just a short introduction. I don't want to take up too much time. My name is Tyler. I'm based in Malaysia, specifically Subang Jaya, and I'm the founder of Transform Cultures. So my startup is actually an interview consultancy. So we help companies to improve their hiring accuracy through incorporating themes like vulnerability into their hiring process. So yeah, we actually help startups and MNCs as well to solidify their company culture by fireside chats, moderated, facilitated learning sessions as well. So more towards the L&D side, focus on making sure the new hires and all that are introduced properly into the companies. Yep, so that's me.
Oh, nice. That's so cool. And then we can go over to Gabriel.
Thank you very much. Yes, as mentioned, my name is Gabriel. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bag Innovation. Bag is an education technology startup in Rwanda in East Africa. I've been based here for the last 5 years, and Bag is a edtech solving the challenge of the mismatch between the graduates and the entry-level employers all over East Africa by offering a platform that uses gamification to offer experience-based learning for university students across the region, specifically targeting the mismatch and increasing their market readiness score of the average university student before they graduate. This we do through virtual internships, through online experiences, and dissecting the traditional approach to how students acquire experience. We have products for employers, for matchmaking and recruitment and onboarding. We also have products for universities to increase the balance between theory and practice that they use inside the classrooms, where we integrate our content with them, with their schools as well. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to continue this discussion.
Oh, that's so cool. And where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Sweden. So
Okay.
I'm not originally from Rwanda.
Yeah. And like me, I'm also from Sweden. So my name is Joseph, and I'm a concept developer at the Innovation and Sustainability Hub in Gothenburg called The Space. And I've been working a bit with putting in place like an internship program. So students from different places in the world can come in and do virtual internships through us. We design a program, and then we'll match it with organizations in our network. So that has kept me busy the last year. And I'm also a member, a board member of a school, K-9 school, where I've been creating like an entrepreneurship course for our older students. So where we matched all the students with students from Nairobi, Kenya, where they were guided through 4 modules to learn about how to create a business model. And we brought in different speakers from all over the world. Serena was one of them. That was very generously giving them some advice about how to do the model, and then they had a demo day in the end. So that's a bit about me. Yeah. So yeah, now we'll take some time to just introduce you guys to the topic, relevant career mindset. So many speak about a fixed mindset versus the growth mindset in these days. So we will start off this discussion about those kind of this mindset. And I will also start off by defining them so we are on the same page. So according to the resources that I've been reading up on before this talk, a fixed mindset can be defined people with a fixed mindset thinks that talent and intellect are readily anchored to their outlook, which basically means that people think that the skills that they are born with can change. They have just a set of skills to start with. And if you get good skills, then you're lucky, and you get bad skills, bad for you, basically. And to contrast that, like a growth mindset is when people accept that their inner basic skills, which they are born with, can be developed through dedication and diligence. So I would say if you have a growth mindset, you are more inclined to go towards lifelong learning. You know that you can develop, you know that practice pays off, basically, and you're more like inclined to have a failing forward mentality. You accept that failure is just part of life and it's needed to develop, and you're not afraid of failing, and you're not afraid of criticism and feedback from different people. You're actually seeking it to develop. So we will be discussing how to make a shift from a fixed mindset to growth mindset, because that's basically the bedrock for you to be able to acquire skills that make you more employable and more successful in the labor market today. And we will also discussing the best ways to acquire these skills. So how does that sound, guys?
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds
nice.
good.
So to start off, why is the growth mindset so important in the modern working world today? So I just leave the floor open to whomever who wants to start.
I think that speaking on behalf of as like a Gen Z, someone from Generation Z, someone who's really like new to the workforce and all that, I think ultimately skills is something that we can develop through our university years, but ultimately it all really comes down to finding your own niche. And personally speaking, I feel that it comes with exploration, a very curious mindset. You know, growth comes from being curious and putting yourself out there to fail. Just now you mentioned Failing Forward, which is a really great book. But at the same time, it's also something that you really have to go through trial and error. For example, for me, back then when I was in university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Maybe I wanted to be a dietitian. I actually did law before I switched to psychology. And right now, I'm like a year ago, I wouldn't have expected that I would be here right now speaking at this panel, let alone like starting my own startup. So a lot of things, you know, it comes without warning. A lot of chances are there for you to take it. They don't just come to you. They're here for you to take it. But whether or not you actually go and approach it, that's your own choice. But at the same time, you know, it comes with a lot of setbacks, especially during COVID-19. I think a lot of us had it very difficult. But what do we do from that setback? What do we do from those obstacles? You know, it's a sense of resilience that I think a growth mindset is built on, in a sense where perhaps there's adversity. What do you do? How do you bounce back from that situation? Or what can you do to make the most out of that situation? And perhaps, you know, it might not be the top of your potential, but what can you make the most out of it? So that's my take on why growth mindset is very, very important, especially for yourself as an individual, as well as what you do within an organization as well.
Nice. So if I capture right, like being able to tackle different things that throws at you, basically to be more agile and flexible. Nice. So would someone else like to chip in on that?
Well, I agree with Serena on the importance of agility, and I definitely think it's important, especially with seeing all the changes that COVID had with us. We see that even before that, the modern workspace was developing so fast that university students were graduating, but as soon as they graduated, their degree was almost obsolete because the employer is now looking for a completely different skill. So if you don't have a growth mindset and you stagnate, and now that's not just university, that's in every job role and anywhere, I think, both in personal development and professional development, is that you miss out on the next year and on the future and on the now if you're constantly living in the past, right? So I definitely agree on the agility side, that being able to quickly jump onto trends. We see that, for example, just as a silly example, the people on YouTube who are the first ones with a trend are the ones who are the most successful. The ones who come last are the ones who are just part of the mainstream group, right? And that's the same way in professional development. The quicker you are with adapting a new skill that is relevant for the modern job market, the quicker you'll get a job. And we've seen that in Rwanda as well. Even if it's a very, very simple skill, some people usually neglect it because they think maybe it's not part of me as an accountant or me as an analyst, that I need to acquire that specific skill. So agility in your type of growth mindset is definitely something I agree with.
Nice. And I know, like Bill Gates, why he was so successful was because he was first. He saw the trend and he jumped on it and worked hard for it. So that's important. So Tyler, would you like to chip in as well?
Yeah, and I think, you know, they raise excellent points in the sense that the flexibility is one part of the growth mindset, I guess. And I guess in the present day job markets, it's very different. Nowadays, you're facing a lot of indirect competition because as technology continues to sort of permeate every different industry, we're seeing like sort of a shift between, like, you know, crossing parallels between certain industries as well. And I think in the past year in Malaysia, we've seen like a little bit of a difficult time where certain jobs became sort of obsolete during the pandemic, and, you know, the movement of talent was a little bit stagnated. So the upskilling talents and reskilling talents were being initiated a lot by certain government arms. So thank goodness for that. But it does speak to the level of how fast you need to be able to adapt to maintain a livelihood, just as a very basic need. But also, if you want to secure the best possible opportunities, not only do you have to be able to adapt to it, the best talents would be able to actually read it and position themselves in front of it before the trend happens. And I think that's where you would really win in the modern workplace. And that's why I think the growth mindset is so important, because you have to understand that you're not reacting to situations. You really need to grow in a way that you're going to be constantly ahead of your competition in order to succeed.
So it's basically like a growth mindset is also a proactive mindset, right? Much about that. Nice. I mean, it's very simple to speak about that you need to have a growth mindset, but yeah, how can we get it? So how can you make this shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset from your perspective, guys?
Just now I touched on the sense of resilience, in a sense where it's very agile. You have to change with the times and kind of be like a preventive kind of like expect the worst to come, or also at the same time expect the best to come at the same time. Just now we actually touched on a bit of like competition, and I think at times competition might be a good thing, in a sense where you may be in a social impact circle. There are other organizations around you who are doing the exact same things as you are. It's completely normal because that's how the market works. But in a sense, you know, I think especially among younger startups or maybe like less experienced founders, I think I find a lot of comfort in communicating with other founders around me and to kind of see where the pitfalls are, or kind of like find some common resources that we can all work towards. But I think that, you know, how to move from like a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, it takes a lot of humility and a lot of compassion for yourself as well, in a sense where, yes, you do need the grit in order to, you know, look for the long run and to find the passion and perseverance for that long-term goal. It takes a lot of self-discipline, but at the same time, you have to recognize that you yourself are a work in progress. There's no end goal that you're working towards. It's part of the progress that, you know, you kind of build on it. What can I do next? You know, what else do I do? But I also think that it's a matter of finding out the why behind why you do the things you do. In a sense where, Care Bear wants to help people who are depressed, but then why do I do it? What is in it for me, as well as what is in it for the people that I am benefiting as well? So I think to me, that's the biggest motivation of why I do what I do.
That's amazing. Yeah, I like the why. It's famous Simon Sinek quote, right? To find the why and maybe have that as a leverage point for you to get this growth mindset. So yeah, other perspective on it.
Um, yeah, I mean, I would say that it's definitely a multifaceted approach when it comes to how to achieve a growth mindset. It's not just about working hard or learning every day, but similar to what Serena is doing with mental health, is that it's not going to be enough to just read a book a day. But if you're, let's say, having bad sleeping habits, or if you're depressed, or if you're not putting the work in your personal life and you're feeling well as well. So for me, I would say it's about having a balance and a growth mindset in all the perspectives of your life, of being able to create disciplines both outside of work as well as inside of work, to be able to achieve the growth mindset in whatever field that you're looking to create. When it comes to growth mindset in careers, it's definitely about your mental health as well. It's definitely about your physical health, and how you balance that with your work and with your career. So for me, it's definitely about finding that balance. It's about uh, growing in the sense of, like, when you're learning, you're doing intentional learning, not just learning in school because you have to, but because you actually want to, and that usually comes with being passionate in a field of interest. So making sure that you're intentional in the choice of which career you're going into, and what the end goal of your growth journey is as well. If you don't have an end goal with what you want to grow into, it's very hard to be intentional with having a growth mindset.
That's so nice. And I like what you brought up with the work-life balance, if I summarize it in that way. So do you have any tips for us to how to find the work-life balance?
Um, I think that's a hard question to answer, because it's different for every individual what that actually means. For me, for example, it's very much about being able to disconnect from work. And for me, I put a deadline for me at 7 p.m. every day, that I'm not allowed to work after 7 p.m. in Rwanda. And for us, it gets dark at the same time of the year, all year around. So at 7 p.m. it gets dark in Rwanda, which means that I know that when it gets dark, I'm not allowed to work. And connected to that, I also focus a lot on my physical health. So I exercise at least 4 or 5 times a week. And as soon as I start slacking on that, I realize that my work ethics and my discipline in work also starts slowing down. So it starts decreasing. So achieving work-life balance, I would say, is keeping in touch with your closest friends and your relations. Don't let them go. Keeping in touch with your physical health. It doesn't have to mean that you have to exercise every day, but if it's eating healthy, and not watching Netflix on your free time is the only thing you do outside of work, but really balancing with something that makes you grow, makes you feel good. Because I feel like we all have a tendency of relaxing and procrastinating in a way that feels destructive, and we want to improve, but then we spend 5 years in that cycle until we realize that we've created really bad habits. So it's about starting with the small habits of what time in the morning you wake up. For me, it was a revolutionary when I started being much more disciplined in waking up the same time in the morning every day of the week. So not slacking off in the weekends and sleeping until 9 or 10 a.m., but staying at, for me, I'm not saying that's the right answer, but waking up at 7 a.m., even if it's the weekend. You don't have to go straight to work, but that definitely makes your daily rhythm more structured, which helps me in getting into the right mindset.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Someone else would have some tips for our audience.
Right. So and to Gabriel's point as well, I'm a strong advocate of routines as well, because I once I took up a routine, I woke up the same time every morning as well now. Constantly maintaining it, and yeah, it does make your day much more predictable than you would probably think, and you're actually in the right frame of mind during the right time of the day as well, which is so important. So I guess if we were talking about how to start transitioning from like a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, I
Yeah,
guess
yeah.
the prerequisite is you really have to want to be in that position. No one can force you to change anything you don't want to change. So if it's not internalized, then you're not going to progress too far. So the intention has to be there. And I guess a way to encourage that is to think about safety in a different sense. So safety used to be defined as, having a solid foundation, or, whether it's financial in terms of your job skills and all that, being very specialized in one area to be rock solid. I would argue that is for at least most industries now, like marketing, technology, that's constantly shifting. Safety actually lies in the flexibility and the ability to adapt. So it's no longer staying in the same place and becoming really, really strong and really, really good in one area alone. Safety actually lies in being able to understand different parts of your environment that you're working in, and being able to flex a muscle as and when things change. So that's really where the safety lies for the modern workplace, I would say. And I guess the way they could start practicing, the growth mindset, if they had to adopt any new habits. One thing I would say is to network widely with people outside of your usual sphere. So not just people within your industry or within your profession as well. Different industries, different professions, and it's not thinking about it in the short-term sense. You're thinking about the long-term, right? If you do become a manager of a firm, you might need to get different vendors in the future. You might move out to entrepreneurship like we are doing right now, right? And these contexts become increasingly valuable over time as well as we continue growing together. So I think, networking widely and with different industries to adopt different ways of thinking and different ways of solving a problem, I think that's something that's good to start with.
Amazing.
Yeah, personally, I feel like what Gabriel and Tyler both mentioned are super valid in a sense where Gabriel mentioned, the physiological aspects of it. And, Tyler also mentioned what it's like to be agile, to move with the times. I think I would add on to that in a sense where it's very easy for us, get swept away by the hustle culture and being like, oh, I have to keep going forward or else I'm going to fall back and I'm not going to catch up again. But it's also about the work-life balance in a sense where sometimes when we're given a shovel, when we fall into a hole, we're given a shovel, the first thing we think about is to dig, right? But then actually the first thing we need to do is put down the shovel and then get our perspectives right before we actually go back and then climb out of that hole. So I think the action of us not being swept away by all the voices around us, not falling prey to our own criticism or the comparison that we might have with our peers, I think mentality-wise, I think that would really, really help us move forward from where we are, especially when we have setbacks and all that. But definitely, yeah, this is a great conversation.
Yeah, I love this inputs, and something that I thought about when I read up upon like fixed mindset versus growth mindset. It was like self-esteem is a quite important component here, because I think if you have a fixed mindset, it basically means that you don't believe in yourself, you don't believe that you are able to develop. Whilst if you have a growth mindset, you have a belief in yourself, you have this kind of self-esteem. I think so that transfers us to my next question, which is how can you acquire a sufficient self-esteem that enables the growth mindset? And I would like to start off with to answering this, because I think like when I grew up, when I was a teen, like many teens, I was not the most secure one, and that was due to some sad things that happened in my family that made me very insecure. But I was so fortunate about to hang out in different communities where people invested in me and believed in me and gave me responsibility and supported me to grow. And it was totally fine to fail in those communities. I was never torn down there. Compared to like a football club where I played, and that was always like I was never allowed to fail. And that was definitely like just fixing me in the fixed mindset zone. So what I would like to stress, it's definitely easier said than done, but choose your friends wisely. Choose the people that are around you wisely, because that can really boost your growth mindset if you are with people that support you and believe in you. So yeah, and I would like to ask Serena about this question as well, because you work within mental health, and if you have depressions and so on, it's definitely a big impediment for a growth mindset. So yeah, how to overcome it and to build your self-esteem.
Yeah, thank you for your question. That is a really good question. If we look at the terminology of what self-esteem is, it's a very broad kind of overview of what you're capable of, and the overview of like what you are able to achieve in life. But then I think, how I would look at it is like try to start smaller. Start with something called self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is referring to, your specific skill set that you're capable at and something that you can hone on to. For example, for some people, it could be public speaking. For other people, it could be mathematics, or, to solve a specific area of that they're experts, they have that expertise in, basically. And so by working on that and you're trying to hone something that you're good at, perhaps it could be baking bread or something like that, you feel a lot of pride from it. And that is like a driving factor that really moves you on. For example, if you think about when you were in school, probably you would have liked subjects that you were good at a lot more compared to subjects that you weren't good at. And that's kind of like a vicious cycle, right? Because the worse you do at it, then the more likely you're not going to do it. Then the skill set's not going to be developed as well. So I think if we touch upon, some people with depressive symptoms, we're looking at the negative cognitive triad, where it's like a sense of hopelessness, worthlessness, and helplessness. It's a sense where, oh, I don't think I'm capable of doing something, so other people will think the same about me, and therefore I am unable to achieve anything in life. So that's a mentality that it's very easy for us to fall into. And for us to kind of critique ourselves and to compare ourselves with our peers, that is also, a big thief of joy. Comparison is a thief of joy, basically. And so even if we compare it with ourselves, like, oh, I don't know if I can make that, that's a goal I want to do, but it's not a matter of like days. It could be a matter of years if you can go to that point, or if it's a matter of like a long time if you can, establish the same thing as your friends are. But it's very important to find your own niche, something that you're proud of, and that in itself takes a lot of exploration. Growth is a matter of like trial and error. It's like falling back and then climbing back up and trying something else or trying again until you find something that you're truly passionate about. So hopefully, the audience gets that message, and a lot of younger people especially, they need encouragement to kind of find where their passions are, and it does take time.
Nice, I like that. So focusing on your niche, be good at that, get confidence from that you master these skills within that, and also try to avoid to compare yourself with other people, right? That's nice. Some other tips about how to grow self-esteem to be able to get the growth mindset?
How to build self-esteem to grow to get a growth mindset, I would say, I would just re-emphasize what Serena was saying. It's a trial and error process. It's not about waiting to try something new, but trying it and failing and learning from it as fast as possible. Putting your feet out there, do stuff that you don't dare to do. Usually put yourself into uncomfortable positions and do that as a habit. Then fairly quickly you'll see a development start happening, but don't expect it to happen over a week or two. But you have to put a couple of months of this kind of repetitive process in your cycles to be able to establish the growth mindset. And even the smartest people in the world and some of the entrepreneurs that we look up to, they're continuously struggling with keeping that growth mindset. So it's not something that you just achieve and then stay with, but really knowing that if you want to live with that kind of mindset, that you're going to have to be investing in it for the rest of your life, but you also have to be passionate about acquiring it. So that's something I would re-emphasize. Just
Nice. So give it time, basically. And I know your father with Gabriel, and he always says to me that he is within the business of growing people. And I guess that's also about growing their self-esteem. Is that something that you acquired as a business leader as well?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you're leading a team, it's very important that the leader is encouraging the team members to achieve the growth mindsets. So, of course, in our company, we've integrated a lot of that. We have mandatory book readings that you have to report once every other month. You have to present to the whole team your outtakes from the book that you've been reading, and we of course then also provide the books to the team, and they can select from a different couple of segments that we're hoping that they're interested in. And for us, it's about the performance reviews. Inside the performance reviews, being able to relate and understand and give individual and personalized feedback to each person is very important. And that's both on a professional level and sometimes on a personal level, where we believe that they need to focus on this, for example, to be able to achieve these KPIs on in the workspace. But doing it in a humble way, so that they feel like we're actually walking the talk, showing us as role models, but also being able to walk with them in that journey.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's really nice. So go and work for Gabriel, then it will develop all your kinds of skills basically. And but it also taps into taps into what I said before, like choose wisely if you have, yeah, you know, the workspace you go into. Like if you come into a good surrounding that builds you up, I think that's so important. So nice. I think we have like put in place a bedrock. Hopefully our message has come through. Like a growth mindset is the one to acquire. So now we just transfer into the next part of our discussion, which is more about which kind of skills should you acquire if you have now when you have this growth mindset. Um, so so my question is, yeah, what skills should you acquire to be relevant in the labor market now post COVID, and now also during Industry 4.0. And with Industry 4.0, I refer to the big changes there are in the industry with new technologies such as AI and IoT and so on. And I know that Tyler had a speech on his YouTube channel about this, like post-COVID skills. So maybe if you would like to start.
Right. I guess what I was discussing on my YouTube, that one YouTube video that I have, is slightly different. But I guess to the context of the post-COVID environment, assuming that seeing the changes that's happening now, assuming that it's on the same trend. Um, well, I'll say you can break it down into 2 points really. Like one is the hard skills, and the other section would be the soft skills. Hard skills wise, I think interpreting data analytics, that's important to have, because in almost every level of work I see now, that's increasingly important. So I mean, in psychology, statistics is king for, you know, measuring certain things and making sure that your study efficacy and all that's taken care of. Even in manufacturing, uptimes, downtimes, smart factories, how that's measured, everything has been measured with a lot of data. Even in HR jobs, you know, job performance, hiring accuracy, everything is basically metric. So understanding how to not just believe numbers, but to try and ask yourself why these numbers are happening, where it's coming from, analyzing the data and trying to draw back to the problem and use data to solve problems. I think that is one of the main technical skills people need to have in the modern working environment. Second part, I would say, in terms of soft skills, the key skill I think you need to have, well, it could be two parts. One is the stakeholder management, basically managing your boss, your clients, everything else, depending on the position you're in. And I think like setting expectations in that sense when you're having client stakeholder management and whatnot, that is key importance, because now when you're working remotely, I think a lot of us are still working remotely. In Malaysia, I know a lot of companies are still forced to work remotely at the time. And I think this isn't going to be, people won't be returning 100% to the office. You know, I think to some degree, there will still be an element of remote working post-COVID. So understanding how to manage people through emails, messages, calls, choosing the engine to manage people by when to have a conversation, when to book a time, how to do it. Even something as simple as sending and blocking your manager's time with a calendar invite could be really a game changer in terms of managing how your work flows. So I think the digital stakeholder management would be a good skill to learn, to pick up, and to manage. Um, on that other end of things, if you talk about managing expectations, I think that has to be one of the things that are most important as well. Because when you're communicating your current workload, how things are moving, the budget that's available to you, again, depending on your department and what you're doing for a living, right? But if you can communicate very clearly when the timelines should be, what they can expect the work quality to be like for the budget that's being put forward to them, for the timeline that they have to execute, what's the chances of delay and all that. So managing that risk in that communication process really does help work to flow a lot better. And at the same time, it does make it easier for you to work well with your team, because when you set the right expectations, you prepare them for the right risks and some of the right fall throughs, and you know each team will be able to sense and pick up each other's drops as and when to support each other better. So I think, you know, in summary, these are the three main skills I think people need to be aware of working in a post-COVID environment.
Nice. Would you like to summarize them like 3 bullet points?
Yeah, I mean, just for the sake of easier comprehension, I suppose, but there's a lot more that has really changed that I probably don't have the time to go into at length.
Okay, sure, sure. Um, and yeah, and you touched upon soft skills, and I know that you, Gabriel, that you think that's an important domain to acquire skills within. So, would you like to describe how you work with helping people acquire soft skills, and which kind of soft skills you stress for them to acquire?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, for employers in East Africa, and I'm pretty sure this is the same for employers all over the world. Some of the key soft skills that they're looking for is critical thinking. It's problem solving. It's high EQ, so high emotional intelligence is something that's becoming more and more attractive for the employer. Being able to understand other people's emotions and act upon those in a rational way is something that is becoming more and more important, connected to what Tyler is saying in data analytics. Yes, is data, reading the data is important, but being able to add the emotional intelligence to that is something that is becoming more and more important for large corporates and for startups. So we emphasize that through testing and through feedback. But we know that the only way that the student can learn critical thinking and become a good critical thinker is by exposing themselves into scenarios where they need to use that skill by themselves. And that's usually in their personal lives, it's in their weekends, it's in the classroom, and being able to, from an outside perspective, critically assess different situations and do that often. And that's also connected to the growth mindset. It's something that just doesn't happen overnight. It's something that you have to do repetitive. You have to be critical against everything, against your own existence and everything that you see, basically, and really know how to analyze and discuss that in a way that is approachable for the people around you. So yeah, I would say those, I mean, communication is obviously a key one here in Rwanda, of being able to elaborate yourself and communicate in a way that is correct in your scenario or in your career. In Rwanda specifically, it's one of the biggest barriers to enter the job market, is that the way you communicate is not the same way that the companies communicate, and therefore they have to spend a lot of money training you in professionally communicating and using, for example, simple tools as Google scheduling and yeah, Asana, for example, for project management, which is very basic tools, but many people sometimes neglect in investing the time to learn them. So everyone probably thinks they're a good communicator, but there's always room for improvement there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Serena, would you like to chip in? And I know that you always stress street smartness, so that's an important part. So maybe you would like to touch upon that.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, street smartness to me, it's also about communicating. So building on what Tyler and Gabriel mentioned, actually, yeah, I do think that data is very, very important, but building on top of it, the sense of empathy and humility on top of it is what really sends the message across. Because no one likes listening to someone sitting here and talking about logistics and factual stuff. People want to listen to a story. People want to engage with you, and that's where human connection comes in. And a lot of times, like it's hindered by basically a computer screen, in a sense where a lot of times technology is great, but at the same time we're limited by it, in a sense where, for example, if I talk about time management, it's great that we get to work from home, it's great that we have the flexibility of time, but at the same time the space that we're working in is also the same space that we are going to sleep in. There's also the same space that we spend time with our family. So how do we categorize our time? How do we find out what matters and what needs to be set aside for later on? And so, like, time management to me, it's something that's very, very important, especially people among my age. Like, a lot of us don't actually commit ourselves to one role. For example, I would say that I'm an entrepreneur, but in another setting I wouldn't present myself as that, because my day job is in research and clinical work in psychology. And so there are many times that I would present myself as different roles. Maybe I'm an English tutor, maybe I'm a teacher for other people. And so it's a matter of risk analysis. So bridging from time management, I think it moves on to what you present yourself as. And basically everything you do, there is a cause and there's an effect. And I think for a matter of whether or not we're able to think on our feet, especially during COVID times, when there's so much uncertainty surrounding the pandemic, we don't know if the next month we're going to be, still working from home, or we'll be moving on to another state or another city. These are all things that we have to take into consideration and manage our time, our expectations, the way we interact with other people. And I think street smartness comes in that sense of being able to adapt to a situation where it's like changing day in, day out. Like, how do we prevent ourselves from getting, withdrawal symptoms, or maybe from getting really, really burnt out from work? These are all things that takes skill set and a lot of self-discipline, as we've mentioned just now as well. So yeah, building on to what Tyler and Gabriel mentioned just now about implementing things as well. I think Joseph would know this very well, because both of us work in design thinking. So kind of like putting ourselves into these situations. Oh, what if this happens? We don't really have to go into it ourselves. We don't really have to go through that mistake ourselves in order for us to learn. Perhaps by giving ourselves case scenarios, by training our brains, and by basically being curious, that is already a huge skill set to have.
That's good. Yeah, touching upon design thinking, would you like to describe what this design thinking is? Like human-centered design, like the key essence of it.
Yeah, you basically mentioned it's human-centric. It's something that you would think about from the perspective of your service user, rather than someone who wants to make money or someone who wants to create social impact. Because you can be sitting in your office, you could be thinking about, I know these people, I know what they want. But do you really know what they want? Have you been in their shoes before? So the first step of human-centric design is basically empathy, to be able to think from their perspective. And this is a really good wrap, because this is where data comes in. This is where you go out there and you basically talk to people who have been in those situations. For example, I think the craziest thing I've done is that I wanted to know what it was like to be homeless, what they would be experiencing, and what are the housing issues that they may encounter. So what I did was, I took a piece of cardboard, I went out to the streets to where they would normally sleep, which is in Hong Kong, normally on a bridge, and I basically just went and laid there for 3 hours. And the things that I encountered was so different than what I envisioned before. I would have expected people to come and be very caring. They wanted to, help me out. They wanted to give me money. None of that happened. Actually, the people passed by, they would stand there and kind of stare at you for a few minutes, being like, oh, what is this kid doing here? Why is she on the street? No, none of them actually bothered to come and mention or to come and ask what I was up to. And so a lot of times, these are the loopholes. So these are the service gaps that as social enterprises or people who want to do social impact, these are the things that we would want to target and to help people. And so going in with the right intention, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of experience that you build throughout the experience. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and it's like, to just summarize, it's basically walking under people's shoes. And that can be, if you're an entrepreneur, to really understand your customer, what is the pains and gains that the customer have. But also for you, if you send out applications as crazy now to a lot of different companies, like really understand what kind of company it is you send it out to, understand the people that work there, what they value. When I applied for, I will be moving to Hong Kong now to help out with the Swedish Chamber of Commerce. And what I basically do to get the position was I just found people on LinkedIn that had gotten that position before, and I called them. And I asked, how can I get the position? How should I write my cover letter? How should I do for my interview? And that yielded me the position in the end. And I would also like, another skill I think is important to mention. I think we touched upon it a bit, but it's storytelling. Like, because the human brain works in that way. Like, we understand the world through stories. That's how we understand cause and effect. And we be touched as human beings by listening to stories. So even if you present data, you can always embed it in a story. And there are tons of books out there that you can read or listen to just learn how to communicate better through telling a story. So my recommendation would be checking out building a story brand, which is basically a very simple formula about how to create a narrative about your brand. But it can also be your personal brand when you apply for jobs. But yeah, now we have talked a lot about like different kind of skills. You should acquire soft skills and hard skills. So, but what is the best way to acquire these skill set then? Is it like through formal education, get a lot of work life experience, take a lot of online courses, or yeah, what do you think, guys? I'll leave the question open.
Well, I guess I could start in that sense because I realize I've been sort of pushing myself back a little bit more to let them carry the weight of the conversation. So I think I'll take my initiative now. Um, so I guess in terms of how to acquire these skills, there's a lot of debate here in Malaysia as to the necessity for degrees anymore, as in formal education. Reason being now, even in like the current economy, right, there are tons of opportunities that no longer actually require the traditional educational route. So for example, like, streaming, esports and stuff like that, you don't have a course to teach these certain skills. And, all these industries are now multi-billion dollar industries. So it speaks to the sort of shift in the ability for people to acquire skills, and even in digital marketing and so on and so forth. Um, it's perfectly plausible for you to be able to go out there, try and experiment and pick the skill up entirely on your own without actually acquiring any form of theory or any form of practice in university. So that is something that I've been noticing. So best way to acquire these skills, formal education to me, not really a necessity. What you are going for in a formal education is most of the time, it's like an apprenticeship. You're acquiring a certain mindset, a way of thinking, a way of solving a problem. So you'll notice, for example, very stark differences between how an engineering student would solve a problem versus how a business student will solve a problem, right? Yeah, the way of, the first things that you think about, the first way they approach a problem is all very different. So that's what you're basically acquiring in your university degree. And that's why you see a lot of engineers moving on to other industries and applying the same skill and building itself, a certain way of building a career using the mindset that they've acquired. Now, in terms of online courses, there's a problem with the completion rates, and I think that speaks to how a lot of the courses are too structured in a way that doesn't inspire learning. And I think both of you are from the gamification sort of industry as well, and I think the whole point there is the way to motivate people to learn now is very different from how you would previously. Um, so that's one of it. Um, but I think the best way is really just to dip your hands in and get some real experience. So for example, you want to acquire like writing skills. Just write in volume. You don't have to get paid yet. Just do it for free. Send it in, get people to verify your work. Just start reading your work. And eventually, as you improve your skills to a point where it reaches a point where you're confident enough to start charging for it, by all means start freelancing or start a business with it. Right. So once you acquire these skills through actually trying the skill in the actual place where you could possibly earn and make a living out of it, I think that really speaks to your ability to apply what you have learned, rather than testing in a controlled environment like informal education and then pushing that forward into the work environment where a lot of students, at least from in Malaysia, that's what we're seeing, a gap between understanding theory and applying theory in the workplace. That is where we see a big gap. And that is one of the problems. And I think that's where my bias would come from in terms of the lack of faith in the education system here, because that clearly is a problem. And the students I know and the people that I personally recruited, for clients in my interview consultancy as well, most of them aren't the best in their studies at all, but they have done side work or outside projects that have contributed a lot to the understanding of how work should be done and how the actual job environment and work environment should be. So the expectations actually bridge before they even join the workforce, which is great. So my personal bias, I would say, yeah, the best way is really just to try out different skills and try to find a way to pick up new skills by just dipping your toes in a little bit, test the waters, and just dive in once you're ready.
That's great, Tyler. That's really great. And I would like to hear Gabriel's take on it because you actually provide an alternative way of acquiring these kind of skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, we see ourselves as a complement to many things. I mean, we're acting as a complement. We're not substituting the university learning. We're complementing the theory within school to bring up the efficacy of the theory in the classroom. So we're really much a complement to that, but we're also a complement to the internship. So if you're going to do an internship where you feel like you're not sure if you're on track on what you should be learning, you can use the platform as a complement to that practical learning that you're also receiving. But we're also seeing ourselves as a complement to e-learning platforms because we're not the ones who train you to become a better accountant. And if the university can provide you with the software that you need to be relevant for the job market, then we are the ones who are kind of complementing the e-learning courses that you could take to be able to add on to your degree to be a bit more relevant. So I would say, and that's our approach to learning, is that you don't just find university as a solution for your career. It's about going through university. It's about creating your own little project where you can acquire some experience within that field of sector. But it's also about learning from your family members. It's also about combining that with having a mentor, which we also provide sometimes on the platform, where you can get a mentor who's successful in the field that you want to go into, and have monthly meetings with them, understand how they got to where they're at, and follow their journey in some senses, and combining that with all types of learning. So it's really, again, a hybrid mindset to what you, depending on what you want to become and what you want to achieve. Don't just settle for one course or for one mentor, but try to really combine all of it in a way that works for you.
That's nice. So like a growth mindset will be, you can have your formal education, but seeking different other domains as well to complement that kind of skills. You can get one set of skills from the universities, but you need to complement it from other areas of life, so
Yeah,
to speak.
definitely.
Nice. And yeah, Serena, would you like to chip in?
Sure. I mean, yeah, just now you gave us a bunch of options to pick from. I'd say all of them, right? So you don't necessarily have to do all of them at the same time. Like you can't have a mentor and then take a few online courses and have university at the same time, although I know some people do it. But ultimately, you get tired, and it's time to, I think, prioritization. It's something that comes in handy during times like this, and having that, retain that sense of curiousness, because I can be really, really interested about a subject within, a 2-month period. I can read everything about it within those 2 months, but then what comes after it, how do I build on it? I never think that there is like a bad decision or a bad internship that I've been to. I think it's all different, right? Because what I can do in the dietary's office, perhaps it is transferable to a law firm, or maybe it's transferable to some other clinic or something else, because ultimately a lot of these skills, perhaps like working with data, communicating with clients, working with words and looking at documents, they're all the same, to be honest. And with it, a lot of it comes from, hands-on experience. And what I love about, this generation, this particular Gen Z generation, is that information is so easily accessible. Like I would be talking to my parents and they'd be like, okay, back in my day, I would go to a library and I would search up information on it in the form of like a book that I have to borrow and carry home. And with it, it literally carries weight. The knowledge that they have to read through it. Whereas for us, all we have to do is go online and then search up, oh, why does this happen? Or maybe it could be anything, or we could just use a Control F and then just search through all the keywords. So I feel like, well, forgive me for saying this, I don't think there's any excuse for us not to learn, because information is everywhere. But at the same time, whether or not we have the motivation to learn, that doesn't just rely on the client or maybe the student themselves, because it is entire infrastructure, it's a system feeding into it. How can teachers make learning more engaging? How can schools make learning not a punishment? We do not want to instill fear of failing. We do not want to, build entire like self-worth based on the marks that they have. We want them to really, really want to learn and to engage with the system. So therefore, just now we mentioned a lot of things about design thinking, problem solving, making a gamified approach. These are all things, and I think our intentions going into it, it's amazing. And I love that there are a lot of people who are doing what we do, and I think it's much needed. And so what can we do to incorporate technology into it? How can we accommodate to COVID times? I think it takes brilliant minds, and sometimes it's more than just one person having a brilliant idea. It takes a team. And so similarly to learning, working in a company or having a career mindset, it's all about collaboration. It's all about, building that sense of community to basically foster empowerment and a network among people. And I think with Andrew and then this entire Rejuvenate initiative as well, that's what we're doing as well, to get the message across and have more people be open to different ideas, to hear things that they've never heard before. That's the joy in learning, in my opinion. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, thank you for that. And I think like when I think about my formal education, I studied business. I'm very happy for my education, so to speak, when because it got me into the business field, because my parents and my upbringing was very far from the business field. So it basically opened up that door, that world for me. And it also helped me with network, and it also helped me so I could go and study abroad in China, which definitely opened up my world. So I think for that, formal education can be great to open up these kind of doors. And unfortunately, the system is, at least before COVID, was very much based on the degree. But it can be quite limited in terms of work life experience. So I think you should see it for yeah, what it is basically. It can help you with some things, but you, as Gabriel said before, you have to look in different other fields as well. And for me personally, I really like online courses. I use Skillshare a lot to just acquire more skills, and I will definitely venture into Coursera soon enough. I listen to a lot of audiobooks to just broaden my mind and understanding of the world and so on. I think that's great tools out there to be able to, yeah, acquire more skills. But in the end, I think as Tyler mentioned, like you need to do things. You need to try it out basically. And there is a quote that says knowledge is power, but there is author, I can't remember his name right now, but he basically said that that's false. Knowledge is potential power. So basically, I think my interpretation is that you need to apply the knowledge you have. You can read whatever, you can have all the kind of degrees, and read all the books, but you have never applied it, and then it's not so valuable in them. So acquire knowledge from a good from sources that you like, and then apply it, because that's how you learn. And also adopt the failing forward mindset, like be open to fail. It's not about you and your self value, it's just part of the process. So yeah, so that's my take on it. And now I see that we have some questions in the chat that I would like to finish off this discussion with. So here is a comment that says that the question is dedicated to everyone. So, and the question is, for those who have lost their jobs due to the pandemic, how would you propose their next step should be? So I can read it again. For those who have lost their jobs due to the pandemic, how would you propose their next step to be?
So I think that, yeah, you want to go, Tyler?
No, it's okay. Go ahead first, Serena.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to do is like to provide a bit of encouragement, because a lot of times we may lose something that we hold value to. It might have been very, very important in a sense where it was our livelihood. It was something that we've been doing day in, day out. But a lot of times, things like this happen, not because of your ability. It might not be because of, it's not your fault, basically. COVID has been a hard time for everyone. And so I think the first thing that you might want to consider is like kind of like find that mentality, find that drive in you. Perhaps it is a blessing in disguise in a sense where, yes, this is very unfortunate, but maybe it's time for you to kind of like reprioritize, see what you're really passionate about. What's the next job that you want to do? If this didn't happen, if you were still in your job, would you have wanted to change to another field? So I think, it's mainly for you yourself to kind of like think about it and sit back. But I think, Tyler and Gabriel might have a lot more, very more technical advice regarding that, but all the best.
Right, and I think what you mentioned is actually a very important point, because last year in Malaysia, what I did in fact throughout the whole year was basically trying my best to help individual job seekers one by one to try and help them a bit on their job search and what they can do to recover from that. And yeah, I think across like the close to 300 plus people I've been talking to throughout the whole year, one of the key things that strikes me is like you said, one of the most important points is actually take the first 3 days or the first week off if they can afford it. Reason being, like you said, it's actually the best move to recalibrate and to calm yourself down a little bit more so you can actually think clearly. And honestly, this might sound a bit weird, but during the pandemic, it's actually one of the best times to transition careers, because when you leave a company, it's actually there's more opportunity in certain areas depending on when the next hiring cycle is. So at least within Malaysia, I have been seeing a lot of shifts. Like a lot of air stewardesses have moved into customer service, customer experience, because they actually train a different way. So that's one of the plus points. Now, the next thing to do after you've taken at least 3 days or a week off, I think the important thing to do is, of course, take stock of your finances. That is one of the key things I think across all the discussions I've had. That's the critical factor, right? To evaluate your finances and calculate how long you have to look for a job. I think that's important to put into perspective. And if you're in no financial rush, my advice would be to really take stock of what you want to do next and try to line yourself up for those opportunities instead. So you could take up to, I think, where HRs would usually wouldn't question too much would be maybe 1 to 2 months. At least this is what I understand throughout recruiting within Southeast Asia. 1 to 2 months, you don't get too many questions. So take that time off to really evaluate what you want to do next, how you want to make that transition, and start building skills towards making that transition. But of course, if you are in not a very good financial state, the advice would be clear. Secure anything in hand by whatever means possible, as long as you're able to do the job. Reason being, look, I think it's just counting where the lesser evils are in that sense, in that scenario. And it might sound a bit dark for this conversation, but I think that's a stark reality of it, right? You need to be able to financially take care of, yourself, your loved ones before you're able to think about the next steps. So yeah, take stock of your financials, and if you are in a dire need for a job, maybe you might want to manage your own expectations in terms of certain salary requirements. If you can meet the bare minimum and save a little bit, that's a good win already. But otherwise, take something that will at least slow the bleeding a little bit and find something else on the side to do in order to make the rest of the income. So that is, I think, an important strategy to use. Um, so yeah, I think that's my 2 cents on the matter, at least from my personal experience. But Gabriel, I'd love to hear your perspective as well.
Thank you. I see we're running out of time, so I'm going to keep it short. But I agree with Serena and Tyler 100%. The worst thing you can do is sit on your butt and complain and say that there's no jobs and there's nothing for me to do. Again, there's very easy ways to create experiences that will quicker prepare you for the next opportunity. So without any means possible, you can still acquire experience, you can still initiate a project, you can still work with your dream job, just you creating it for yourself and learning from that experience. So keep it simple, keep it creative. Look at what people are doing it a little bit different, doing it in your own way will definitely distinct yourself on the market in a way that many people might not do it. And of course, with that, including discipline, will get you where you want to be. Structure your work day, or not if it's a work day, if it's a non-work day, if you're laid off, then structure your day in a way that by the end of the day, you feel like you've accomplished something every day and you've learned something new every day. If you do that, it's a matter of months between when you get your next opportunity.
Sweet. Yeah, we have some more questions. I think we can go through them before we finish up this session. So the next one here is, we have touched upon it before, but what are the top 5 skills that you think will be in high demand the next 5 years? So if you like to try to get it nice and crisp, like a five skills bullet list for every one of you. So starting with, yeah, whoever feels for it, feels to start.
Um, okay, let me try to say 5 skills. I'll say emotional intelligence, software development, um, people management, um, excellent problem solving skills, and um, communication.
Nice.
Well, I guess I'll hop in next then. Adding on to that, I'll try not to cross any of them on the same list. Try to get them something different, right? First thing I say, again, data interpretation is really important. Problem solving skills, because again, you're being hired to do a job, to solve problems, not to cause more problems. That's the fundamental basis of having a job. Um, yeah, I guess articulate speech is important, especially during presentations and so on and so forth. Learning how to represent information and to create presentations that are streamlined for different people, CEOs, your manager, a team of people that you're talking to, so on and so forth. That's important. And if I had to name one more, I would say empathy. So to establish certain understanding and to be a little bit kinder to everyone, I think that's really important, especially during times like this.
Yeah. And as for me, I don't know. I feel like there's no one size fit all framework to this, but I can say that I think aging industry definitely needs, a lot of help in. I think the entire process of automation, of being able to streamline a process, especially within, firms like Alibaba or maybe, these type of logistics firms, they really need that kind of help in computerizing everything. On top of that, analyzing data, and I think, to me, perspective taking, presenting your idea across to other people. Not all people want to listen to the same things, so perhaps you want to cater what you say to the people that you're trying to portray that idea to. And fifth of all, I think creativity, because we need more of that. We need to keep the world going, and I think innovation, it comes with creativity. So these are my 5 points.
Nice. And I will actually cheat here because I have a list of top 10 skills of 2025 from World Economic Forum. And why I cheat is basically because I would like to stress that World Economic Forum does a very good work where to list like relevant skills for the future and post like reports continuously upon that topic. So that's a great way to read up. But they mention like complex problem solving, leadership and social influence, active learning and learning strategies, which we have touched upon a lot during this talk, resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility, very important now during COVID, and technology use, monitoring, and control. So, but yeah, in essence, go in and check World Economic Forum. There you can found tons of materials. So the next and penultimate question we have here is, should growth mindset be taught early on in the childhood, or when is it too early? And I think that it's about, should we help our kids to develop a growth mindset, and when should we start to do that?
There's no risk to growth mindset, given the fact that it is something very positive. Like in positive psychology, what we want to instill the sense of self-belief. Like ultimately, everyone, all the children and students, included, all of them just want a sense of belonging within the system, and they want something that they can take pride in. So it all starts from very, very small things. Like, for example, you would have a pet, and you would you tell them to sit, they sit, and you give them a treat. That's as simple as that. It's the same thing with children as well. I think a really good tool for you guys to, especially parents, to find out what your children's skill sets are, is to do the 24 strengths test. So basically it categorizes, it's a quiz, basically categorizes what your skill sets are, what your strengths are. It could be resilience, humility, humbleness. It's like a whole list. And then you can basically identify that, the top few ones that are things that I do pretty good at. And then the ones at the bottom are not skills that they don't have, but it's something that perhaps you can work on within the long run. It's a self-improvement. It's a very, very long-lasting journey. It lasts through your lifetime. And again, you are your own project. This is a project of life. So what can you do to implement it and kind of, change what you have to do, kind of improve on your skill sets that you have? It's an ongoing process. And I never think that it's too early to start positive reinforcement. But yeah, it's like for parents, it's something it takes a lot of trial and error as well. And it's never easy to be a parent, but to at least, be supportive of your children's goals, to perhaps, there's always a way to go, no matter whatever degree they go for, no matter what they want to do in their lives. Just trust that your children, they do think for themselves, and your children do have a sense that they want to achieve in their life. There's always like a way to go. Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, start us up, as we say, as soon as possible. So, and I think we can take the last question and finish off with that now. So, how would you advise someone who is an employee that may not have the conducive work environment or time to cultivate these skills or mindsets? How can they come out from such a cycle?
Well, I think the first thing to address that is you always have time. You always have time to cultivate these skills. It's just a matter of how you manage your own time and how you choose to spend your time. And speaking from experience here, because my first internship was when I was 15, and I started writing when I was still taking my A levels in college. So honestly, I think it's just a matter of how badly you want it and how you want to start. And I think in situations where typically I've seen people who have a lack of opportunity, right? The underprivileged class in Malaysia, the B40s, for example, you see a lot of brilliant people, and they are very hardworking people. And yeah, I think it's just a matter of managing your time well. And if you don't have the resources, start meeting more people, start trying to find ways in. And like, Serena mentioned earlier, there's so much access to technology as long as you can afford a simple mobile phone. So if you can have somebody that has a mobile phone, even you can start having these discussions, these conversations, and really start learning from videos on YouTube, for example. That is the first leg in. And trust me, that will lead you towards a whole different journey. So I don't think that you have no time and there's always a lack of resources. You just need to find it.
Yeah, I second what Tyler is saying. Is definitely management of your own time. Um, that's the same excuse when people say I don't have time to exercise. I'm too busy here. I'm too busy this. There's no time in my schedule to exercise. Everyone has said that at some point of their life, but if you look back at it, there's always time. It's just a matter of discipline and motivation. But of course, it's a challenge. It's just looking at where in the week can you find those loopholes to be able to start a process of creating this growth mindset, and starting with something that you're really passionate about outside of that work that keeps you busy. Yeah, but otherwise I agree. It's very much your own time management there that is the key to that success.
Yeah, and I also would like to stress that, like, if there is some resource that are equally distributed in the world, it's time. Everyone has 24/7, and we can dedicate it in ways that fits our goals and yeah, long-term visions. Basically, it can be hard, definitely, for other people, but you are the lord over your time. So take that stewardship and do it well. So, and I think we can end this discussion here. And thank you for your participation, my friends. And I hope that I see you soon in this kind of settings again. So goodbye here
Thank
from
you.
Sweden.
Right. Thank you for having us. Cheers.
Thank you for having us.
Bye bye. Goodbye. Have a good day.